INFJs are terrified of the one thing that would actually free them. And the reason isn't what you think. There's a version of yourself hiding beneath the surface, so powerful and intense that even you're afraid of what might happen if it fully emerges. For INFJs, this isn't paranoia, it's a psychological reality. The transformation from empathetic healer to strategic architect. Before we start, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. By the end, you'll see precisely why INFJs sabotage their own evolution, and why claiming this power changes everything. Before we start, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss any of our weekly deep dives into the world of personality types. And if you're looking for a deeper understanding of yourself and your INFJ personality, browse our favorite INFJ products in the description, and click the link in the comments to take our favorite free personality test. The prison they built. How INFJs trap themselves in people-pleasing. Most INFJs don't realize they're living in a prison they constructed themselves. The bars are invisible, but the cage is real. It starts early when the young INFJ becomes the family's emotional thermostat, constantly adjusting their own temperature to keep everyone else comfortable. Maybe one parent was unpredictable. There may have been constant tension between family members. Whatever the circumstances, the INFJ learned their job was to feel the emotions others couldn't or wouldn't feel. They became expert at predicting what people needed before those people even knew themselves. This gift became their curse. Once you develop the ability to manage everyone else's emotions, it's nearly impossible to stop. The INFJ learns that their own needs matter less than the stability of the system around them. They discover that their intensity frightens others, so they dial it down. They realize their directness can hurt people, so they start softening every opinion, every observation, every truth. Over the decades, this becomes calcified. The INFJ isn't just choosing to be smaller anymore, they've forgotten they were ever anything else. Their intensity goes underground. Their vision gets compartmentalized into private journals and late-night conversations with trusted friends. Their power becomes invisible, even to themselves. The prison was built with good intentions. The INFJ wasn't trying to shrink themselves to be harmful. They were trying to survive in a world that felt too sharp, too loud, too uncertain. The prison was protection. But protection becomes a cage when you can't remember how to leave. The accommodations they've made haven't actually created the peace they hoped for. The people they've sacrificed for often don't even notice. The institutions they've tried to serve from within continue their destructive paths, regardless of how hard the INFJ worked to fix them from the inside. This realization is destabilizing. It's like discovering you've spent 20 years solving a math problem that has no solution. All that effort, all that emotional energy, all that self-denial, and what does it amount to? Some INFJs experience this as burnout. They hit a wall where they literally cannot continue performing the role they've been playing. Their body forces them to stop. Others experience it as a moral awakening. They start to see that real change doesn't come from accommodation. They realize some systems need to be disrupted, not served. The breakdown isn't just physical or intellectual, it's existential. The INFJ is forced to ask fundamental questions. Who am I when I'm not being helpful to others? What do I actually want? What am I willing to stand for, even if it makes people uncomfortable? These cracks in the foundation are terrifying, but they're also the beginning of liberation. The useful INFJ who sacrificed intensity for acceptance is starting to crumble. What emerges from those cracks is something far more dangerous to the status quo. The strategic mind awakens when intelligence meets intensity. What emerges from the breakdown isn't what most people expect. Most assume INFJs are purely feeling-based, intuitive hearts operating from pure emotion. While this is partially true, there's something else happening beneath the surface that often goes unnoticed. INFJs have incredibly strategic minds. When an INFJ allows their strategic thinking to emerge, when they stop apologizing for it and start trusting it, something powerful happens. They begin to see systems, patterns, and leverage points that others miss entirely. They understand how organizations actually work, not how they're supposed to work. They can identify the fundamental power structures and the invisible dynamics that determine outcomes. This isn't cynicism, it's clarity. The evolved INFJ sees through the official story to understand what's really happening. This strategic intelligence, combined with their intuitive understanding of people, creates a unique kind of power. The evolved INFJ can read a room and understand not just the emotions present, but the political dynamics, the hidden agendas, the unstated hierarchies. They can observe a person and understand not just what they're saying, but why they're saying it and what they actually want. This combination is potent. It's like having the ability to see 3 moves ahead in chess, while also being able to sense what your opponent is feeling. The evolved INFJ can navigate complex situations with an ease that often shocks people who've known them for years. The scary part, the part that even scares the INFJ, is that this power can be used for good or for harm. The evolved INFJ has to confront their own capacity for manipulation, for political maneuvering, for using their understanding of people as a tool of control rather than connection. Most evolved INFJs are deeply committed to using their power ethically, but they're aware that they have the capacity to use it otherwise. That awareness is humbling and frightening. They understand manipulation because they could do it. They recognize psychological leverage because they feel it. They see through others' attempts at control because they know how it works. At some point in this evolution, the INFJ crosses a threshold where they simply cannot compromise their core values anymore. They literally lose the capacity to pretend. They can't smile and nod when they see hypocrisy. They can't participate in systems they recognize as corrupt. They can't support people or causes that violate their ethics, even if doing so would be easier. This isn't about becoming rigid. The evolved INFJ is actually more flexible than they've ever been about methods and strategies. What they've become rigid about is their integrity. There's simply no amount of external pressure that will make them betray their core values. This creates a kind of freedom that's almost frightening. When you know you won't compromise your integrity, you don't have to negotiate with fear anymore. The decision-making process becomes simpler. Does this align with my values and my vision? Yes or no? The trade-off is that this integrity often puts the evolved INFJ at odds with people and systems around them. Organizations that ask them to do things that feel ethically wrong will find that the evolved INFJ simply won't do it, regardless of the consequences. Relationships that require them to suppress their truth will dissolve. Their vision also crystallizes from vague idealism to specific, actionable purpose. For most of their lives, the INFJ has carried abstract idealism. They know something is wrong with the world, but it's all pretty fuzzy. As they evolve, this vision becomes concrete. They start to see exactly what needs to change. They begin to understand not just the problem, but the solution. More importantly, they start to see their role in creating that solution. The evolved INFJ might leave a stable job to start something new. They might walk away from a community that no longer aligns with their values. This new stubbornness comes with crystallized vision. The evolved INFJ isn't interested in compromise for compromise's sake. Their core values aren't negotiable. Their vision for what's possible isn't negotiable. Everything else is flexible, but those two things are fixed points around which everything else revolves. The final form: amplified presence and unstoppable motion. One of the most noticeable shifts in the evolved INFJ is their presence. People feel them in a room. There's a kind of gravity that pulls attention without demanding it. Conversations shift when they speak, not because they're loud or aggressive, but because there's an authority that comes from genuine internal alignment. This presence is a direct result of the internal work they've done. For so many years, the INFJ was scattered. Part of their energy went into managing how others perceive them. Part went into suppressing their intensity. Part went into second-guessing themselves. All this fragmentation created a diffuse presence. The evolved INFJ has collected all that scattered energy and focused it. They're not managing perception anymore. They're not performing. They're not divided against themselves. They're simply showing up as who they are. That wholeness creates a magnetism that's immediately recognizable. This presence can be mistaken for coldness by people who knew the earlier version. They might perceive directness as rudeness. But what's actually happening is that the INFJ has stopped using warmth as a tool of avoidance. They're still capable of deep connection, but they're not using it to manage other people's comfort anymore. What makes the final form INFJ unstoppable is that they're no longer motivated by fear. They're not trying to avoid abandonment. They're not trying to prove their worth. They're not trying to maintain an image. They're simply moving towards something. And nothing can really stop that forward motion. The evolved INFJ becomes a kind of force of nature. Not destructive, but certainly not containable. They move through the world according to their own internal compass. They attract people and opportunities that align with their mission. They repel people and situations that don't. In their final form, the INFJ has integrated seemingly opposite qualities. They're both soft and strong, both compassionate and fierce, both humble and confident, both connected to others and willing to stand alone. These aren't contradictions. They're complementary forces that create wholeness most people never achieve. Most importantly, they've stopped being afraid of themselves. They've stopped apologizing for their intensity, their vision, their power, their authenticity. They've stopped trying to make themselves smaller to fit into other people's comfort zones. They're simply living in alignment with who they actually are. If you're questioning whether you're losing your compassion, you're already evolving. The fear is natural. You're mourning the version others were comfortable with. But on the other side is freedom to contribute your gifts without diminishing yourself. The final form isn't someone to fear becoming. It's your most authentic self with power fully claimed. If you want to continue the journey to understanding yourself, or an INFJ in your life, click either of the following videos, where we continue to unlock the secrets of the INFJ personality type.